Happy rain day. Janine, could we have roll call, please?
Calling the roll, Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Ms. Baker. Here. Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Council President Brady.
Here.
Ms. Conwell. Here. There's a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Welcome, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Public comment?
Yes, Reverend Pinckney.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Reverend Pamela M. Pinckney Butts. And we need to revisit that Bible. And Dr. Elliot Dasenbrook would agree that exercise is profitable for the body. I came today because resolution number 77, I didn't see, I know it deals with residential programs. I'll wait till he's finished. It deals with residential treatment programs, but I would ask that you would also visit the other entities, the other community entities that also are that deal with mental illness and other resources to put people back into the community for that resolution for public safety. And that would be something like Care Alliance, Connections Mental Health Agency, because all those components, all those entities work together, and they work together when people are coming out of the homeless shelter and in other places. And I wanted to just bring to your attention that I smiled and I joked a bit when I say about revisiting the Word of God, the Bible, but we do need to revisit it because it's misunderstood and it's taken out of context in these times in dealing with public safety. The 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which is also known as the Ghost Amendment, the Pro-Slavery Amendment, and the Corwin Amendment, state clearly that slavery is never to be abolished in the United States of America. If a person commits a crime, then they can be deemed and become an indentured slave through the law. The Word of God says that the letter is for death and the Spirit is for life. As you're doing these different options and obligations addressing public safety, hell is real and heaven is real. It's very, very much so. I would also like for you to revisit the Corwin Amendment because Corwin was a representative from Ohio to look at what really is going on here. Today I had the memory of my grandfather, Theodore Roosevelt Pinckney, who in these times, God knows when to take people away because he would have wept in these times. You have some very major challenges before you. And as I stated, you weren't here, Council President Brady, I'm very misunderstood and very misinterpreted, and people have given you the wrong perception of me. I don't go around doing bad things to people. I don't. Never have, and I'm not going to. I come from holy, faithful parents who have been married for going on 61 years now, and I have not ever lived in a dysfunctional setting. So they've set the standard of public safety for me. And my mom told me, don't ever fight for me with your fists. And I'll be back for non-agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In your packet, you have the minutes of March 6th. If they're in order, I'll accept a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. Janine?
Resolution number 2018-0077, authorizing an amendment to master contract number CE 17-00026 with various providers for residential treatment services for the period 2/1/2017 through 1/31/2019.
And who do we have from Juvenile Court? Karen.
Good afternoon. Karen Littman with Juvenile Court. We have today our master contract for residential treatment services for youth that are court involved. This is the second year of this agreement, so we are here for this amendment to add the second year dollars to the amendment. We are actually adding an additional $750,000 from our Title 4E fund as well because we need the money. We exceeded the $3 million in the last contract year. There also was a question regarding one of the vendors and some of the statistics that we pulled from it, so I wanted to just get that information out. This was referring to Cleveland Christian Home. which is on the near west side of Cleveland. So when we put all the information into OnBase to present to you, and we pull the statistics, which this was put into OnBase probably last December, we only had from February to December statistics to provide to you. So what I have today is a little more updated, which is a little more well-rounded, because there was only a few youth that had been terminated from, or terminated from their program, and they were all unsuccessful. So it didn't look like they were doing so well. There was only 3 youth that were unsuccessful. But at this time, there's 11 youth that have been discharged from the program, and 7 were successful, and then the same 3 that were unsuccessful, and 1 was terminated as a neutral. So and then the youth that were successfully terminated have demonstrated their scores on Ohio Scales, which is one of the tests that they take to see how they're really doing better, that they all showed that their pre and post tests showed that they were doing better as they were released. One of the struggles that they do have, which is actually pretty much universal, is family engagement. So each one of our residential programs has a component of bringing the family in really from the get-go, because these youth aren't going to be in these facilities forever, and they're going to have to return home. And that's a continual struggle for all of the placements. It looks like, from my statistics, that there really has been no recidivism of those successful terminations. So I just wanted to give you a little update on that one provider.
For the newer members, could you just go through beginning to end and how the kids are placed in the program and how they're reintroduced back into society?
Sure. So the youth are recommended for what we call placement planning through a court hearing, through a jurist. And that goes back to it. We have a specific unit that deals with youth going into a residential treatment facility. And there is sort of a group that looks at what the youth has been involved with, and looks at their treatment, looks at their history, whether it's their criminal history. It also looks at their family and what other services they have been provided. By and large, we look at how many community-based interventions the youth that youth has been involved with before we send them to residential. So we don't just bump someone up to taking them out of the home and putting them in a residential facility. So there has to be sort of a history, if you will, of a lot of community-based interventions that have been tried and then failed. And then that group looks at it. They often will bring in community service providers and other sort of ancillary people that are involved with the youth and or the family, and then make a recommendation, and that goes back to another court hearing and is presented to the jurist, who then makes the final determination of whether the youth is going to a residential treatment facility, or whether they're going to, if there's a recommendation, we think this youth should try this program in the community, whether they should give that another shot before they're taken out of the community. And then while they're in the treatment facility, they're given a sort of a specialized probation officer, who we call placement aftercare coordinator. And really from the first day that they go into placement, we really start preparing at that time for the youth coming home. So the court staff, the placement aftercare coordinator, we call them PACs. The PAC is involved with that treatment plan of what kind of treatment that they want the youth to receive while they're in the facility, helping to get the family engaged, preparing the family for the youth returning home, and then any kind of community-based interventions that are going to occur once the youth does come home to maintain that stability. So I believe right now the average length of stay is between 4 and 6 months, although there's going to be outliers on that. There's going to be some youth that will stay longer and some that will be staying, their stay will be shorter.
Thank you. Any questions? Sure.
Thank you for the explanation. I appreciate knowing more
Sure.
about this program. Just on the funding part of it, if I may, this is a 2-year, so this is
year 2 of
year
the
2.
2-year.
So it's actually a $6 million plus program.
Correct.
Okay. The So 3 million has already been applied,
Absolutely.
and it's effective 2/1.
Right.
So we're now at 1 year and 10 months.
Yes.
What have you done in those couple of months to make sure that these services continue, given it was effective 2/1?
So we had a little bit of a hiccup with, because this is a master contract, you have to have each one of the vendors sign the one agreement to move it forward through the process. So we had one vendor, because we sent these all out right after Thanksgiving, to be honest, the first week in December, and we sent everything out and said, please sign and return to us. So we had one vendor who didn't sign. They were waiting to, these vendors were all chosen through an RFP process, and they knew it was going to be a 2-year process. So there was one vendor who was in the midst of negotiating with DCFS on their rate for a program, and so they essentially held back until that rate was negotiated with CFS, and then turned around to us in January now, so they had it for almost 6 weeks without signing it, and said, well, CFS gave us this rate, will you give it to us too? And we said, well, we're in the middle of a process where we selected you, this is in the proposal,
Right.
this is the rate that you gave us. We're going to be going into a new RFP process starting this summer. You know, that's the time to let us know what your per diem is. So all of that took time, which is why everything got backed up. So all of that being said, we have continued with services because there have been youth that were in facilities, you know, and we've just sort of done the best we could until we got to this point in the process. Does that sort of answer your question?
Just as a follow-up, so the couple of months of gap, and also being short of funding, because we're adding another
Right.
$755,000, you were able to pay the supplier?
And no, actually, we were not able to pay. So we had to actually turn to each of our vendors and say, we paid until we're down to the, we're collecting the pennies up.
Right.
And we've just told them all that one of your comrades here held up the process. Because, as you know, we always try to get these things done well in advance,
Right.
And have everything so that everything is really very seamless. So for us, this is kind of an
Unusual.
uncomfortable process because we are, the
Right.
beginning of April now for something that we started December 1st.
Right, good. Thank you for
So,
that explanation.
sure.
It's good to know that background, and I appreciate you always coming in on time, and that this is an exception.
Sure, thank you.
Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chair, my questions were answered in that last round. Thank you.
To the chair, to Karen, you stated you needed additional funds, and you had to add the 750 Title IV funds.
Yes.
Why is that? What ran over?
Well, when we did the RFP the last time, which will be, prior to this contract, all of the per diems had gone up. Some of them more than others. We try to hold our service providers when they ask for more money. We try to hold them to like 2 to 3%. There were several that were a little bit more of a jump than that. So that was one of the pieces of the puzzle that didn't really fit. Another piece was that we have an array of service providers because each one has sort of a particular specialty of the kinds of issues that youth have, where you're going to send them. Some of those have a more expensive per diem than others. So if you have walking in the door a lot of youth that need that more expensive treatment, that's what you're going to provide. So then if your per diem is, $75 a night more than another service, you're going to, your costs are going to go up as well. So you do the best you can at estimating what you're going to need, but then you don't really know. I do know that all of the jurists have sort of a ceiling, if you will, more of a target of how many youth that are coming from their courtroom and their magistrate's courtroom that are going to residential treatment, so that we keep the total population, around 60 to 60 to 75. I can't remember what the number is right now, but there is sort of, so that we monitor so that not, one judge isn't sending a lot of youth. So we're trying to keep the total population down. But then again, if everybody needs the higher end service, you're going to send them to the higher end service. So that's sort of what happened this year. So this way we won't be running into a problem or having to do another amendment, because we'll have this cushion over the HHS dollars that are provided.
Can you speak a little bit to the Title IV funds? Do we keep that? I mean, that's a reimbursement from the federal government, correct?
It is. The Title IV is part of the Social Security Act, and the court has two sort of components of that program. One is maintenance, which is a portion of the for those youth that are Title IV eligible, so you have to maintain eligibility and meet certain criteria, then there's a portion of the per diem that is reimbursed to the court. And then the other piece is what we call administration, which is sort of a very lengthy, complicated formula that has to do with the number of Title IV eligible youth you have and sort of an accounting of the administrative functions.
So we keep that in like in a separate...
Those are two separate accounts, okay. Special revenue accounts. So we are allocating $750,000 of the court's Title IV fund to the residential placement, and that should clearly take us through this contract year.
Out of the A through P list, could you give us an example of one of the higher per diems and what that is versus one of the lowers?
Okay, I will do this from the top of my head since I don't have them all in front of me, but I'm going to do the best I can. I know that Belfair and Applewood are both are more expensive providers. Glen Mills is probably our lowest per diem provider. Who else is pricey?
Okay, and what is that? What is that?
The difference is, like Belfair's severe psychological treatment facility, it might be as much as $400 to $450 a night. Glen Mills is at 168. 168 a night.
Okay, big difference.
Yes, big difference.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further?
More questions?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
When you talk about 4E covers some costs for maintenance, what do you mean by maintenance?
Maintenance is the reimbursement for that per diem. So to receive maintenance reimbursement, there's more than a couple components, but essentially the first thing you have to do is determine if the youth is 4E eligible, and there's sort of a whole list of things, and the probation officer makes that determination of the 4E eligibility of the youth. And then for those youth that are 4E eligible, this is information that we put into SACWIS, which is the statewide ODJFS system. And then the facility has to be a Title 4E eligible facility. And then ODJFS determines the per diem rates. And then so that if the youth is eligible, and I'm sort of simplifying this a little bit, but if the youth is eligible and it's in a facility, and we then have to put in our the information on the youth. So there's a number of reports that have to be done on a monthly basis to maintain that you're working with the youth. And then once the invoice comes to us and we pay it, and then we have evidence of it being paid, then we put information into the SACWIS program, and then the state then sends us the reimbursement for that. That's done on a monthly basis.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Lippman, let me simplify the question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
When we talk about maintenance, are we talking about costs related to running the facility itself, or are we talking about costs related to treatment of the youth?
Okay, so maintenance is the term that the Title 4E and ODJFS uses for that reimbursement fund. But what it really is referring to, so the facility has to go through sort of a whole long process to become a Title IV-E facility, and they come up with a recognized Title IV-E per diem. That does include, you know, maintaining the facility, sort of their administration of what it costs to run that facility, but it also includes things like sort of the room and board of maintaining that youth in that facility. So it's sort of, the rate is a mixture of all of that facility's costs involved in a day of that youth. Does that help?
You said there was maintenance and one other thing.
Administration. So that's the other component that we submit separate from that process that we submit to the state for reimbursement for. That's typically done on a quarterly basis, and that involves the court's costs, everything from salary to the different administrative functions of the court, the rent, utilities, all of that, those kinds of costs. And then it's sort of runs through a formula based on what they call a penetration rate, which has to do with the amount of total youth that are being monitored by the court and the percentage that are Title IV-E eligible.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Well, I'm assuming we need to move this forward
Absolutely.
through no fault of your own.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's usually on our side, so. But I'm sorry you ran into that problem. So if the committee's comfortable with doing that, I'll accept a motion to move Resolution 2018-0077 to the full council under second reading under suspension.
Second.
Having heard a motion for and a second, everybody for, vote yes. A? Against? You got it.
Thank you much.
It is so good to see you.
And I just want to say, this isn't rain, this is liquid sunshine.
When it's you, it's always sun.
Liquid sunshine.
Thank you. Tell our friends at the court hello. Last week I had an occasion to meet with Mr. Mills on a different subject, but I mentioned maybe we need to be updated on the jail regionalization program. It's a program when we started taking over, we took over Euclid to begin with. Now we're moving on to others. And I think it's important that we find out where we're at and what other communities are interested in moving forward in a regional manner regarding the local jails.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mills.
Ken Mills, the Director of Regional Corrections. Thank you for letting me have a few minutes of your time. First, I'd like to point out I haven't seen you in a while or updated you on the jails for a while. Some of the success, some things that happened last year for us. Over the last year, we passed the state inspection again, so we're fully compliant, second year in a row, which is a great feat for us to be able to do that. And some of the data, and I'll leave a copy over the year, was very impressive, and it shows that we're on the right track, I think. You see the violence in the jail, our attempted assaults on staff went down over 61% last year. The overall incidents in the jail, where they're investigated, they went up 57% from 16 over the course of 17. So we've got some pretty impressive things going on, and I attribute that to technology upgrades that we've put in. The cameras are complete in technology, and the training, the OPATA Academy, and the training for our new employees coming in. So those are paying dividends for us. It took a few years to see it, but it's finally coming through. The Cleveland project to move forward with regionalization. Bedford Heights Jail is set to open. The construction's done. We're cleaning it and installing the computers for the computer lab and throughout the jail today and tomorrow. We expect to have it inmates or it filled up or operational on Friday of this week. Thanks to Public Works, they kept us on track with the modifications. And also, we're still under budget with that program. March 15th, we took over the House of Corrections from Cleveland. We started gradually bringing their inmates in, and we completed that. So right now, we have all the Cleveland inmates who were normally at the House of Corrections with us, which that allowed us to bring over the employees that are coming over. All their employees, the first wave of them have came in. They're qualified, doing great. They're doing a great job. They're on board and in place. Today was the last wave of them. I think we have 4 of them due to vacations and stuff that started later. That came in today. From here forward, that completes our phase 1 of the transition. That was our first major task, is to take that. Cleveland is in the process of mothballing or shutting down the House of Corrections right now. We are now in the process of moving toward taking the fresh arrest coming into the jail, which would probably be, I wanted to get Bedford Heights open staffing-wise, so neither one of our places are exhausted or stressed from the new operation. The 20th, we have another class graduating, OPATA, out at Tri-C. At that time, that class will come in, and then we'll start the 24-hour operations and our intake. And at that time, we'll start taking over the fresh arrest coming in from Cleveland. Then as that progresses, we'll go district by district until September. Part of the deal, the plan is by September to have all those operations, it'll be a complete transition at that time. Right now, it's going very well. We haven't had any, we don't see any reason. I actually think taking the fresh arrest is going to go much quicker because it's our normal routine. It's really not that much of a new task to be taken on. And the amounts, right now we're getting them, they go to the central booking over at Cleveland, but we're getting the inmates the day or the day after anyway. So it's physically, it's just a paperwork issue will be the challenge. Make sure the data is exchanged between us and the Cleveland police and figuring out what's the best way to do it. I mean, we think we have that, but you know, as we test it, we know there'll probably be some modifications made, but we don't see any large problems with that. The next step, and which was part of the budget proposal this year, was to build out our 4th floor. If you haven't been to the jail, on the 4th floor, we used to have the old kitchen was in there. And that is approximately a 13,000 square foot room that's just locked up and not being used. So what we intend to do with that is to go in and turn that into dormitories, make that where we can use it for beds. The construction cost to do that for the demo and to redo it is about $3.1 million. Our Public Works has got us on target, on schedule, to be able to do that and have it done by September to be able to start using it. That's the plan as far as that goes. With that, the beds that would provide would bring us, anywhere. The max would be 5.7 million revenue a year if we filled every bed. So as long as we keep the beds filled up, you can, I think it's a very safe projection to say, $3.5 to $5.5 million a year will come in from operating that, from having that capacity. Right now, I've not engaged too aggressively with trying to bring on the suburbs due to not having a good time, because it's hard to tell them I can take them. They have a lot of changes to do without a forecasted date. But since we have been speaking about it, I have 16 of the municipalities have interest in it, in having us do that. Part of this plan will also include us having to take over another facility on the west side, somewhere to be a transport hub. Would basically be what it is. It wouldn't be a facility where we're going to staff and keep inmates. It would be where the suburbs or municipalities could drop off their arrest. Their arrest, we could book them, and then we would transport them back downtown. We would have a daily trip coming through, bringing them back downtown. So that's kind of where we're at as overall as a whole. The projected cost to run that with the staffing and the additional, the transportation and everything is about $1.9 million a year to maintain it, to keep it going. We expect that after, now that I have a date, that we can actually project out of when we would be doing operations. I plan to get much more aggressive with engaging with the communities to see, who all we can get on board, how we're going to step them in to bring them into what we're doing. Selling or, just spreading the concept to them about the medical care that the increases in service that the suburbs are receiving from this transition is pretty phenomenal. I mean, they have the medical care, the best. We actually put people, when they leave our facility now, we're the first one in the state that has it where they're automatically enrolled in Medicare. So the day they walk out, they have their Medicare if they're eligible. Just those type of services benefit. They have access to social workers, and this part of this plan also, I should add to it, is the use of that area up there. When we say add in capacity, I don't mean those beds would be just segregated for suburb people. To me, it's holistic. It's adding that many beds to our facility. What we're looking at using that for is more of an intake area, short stay, less than 30 days, more fresh rest, so that my social workers, and part of the cost included more social workers, would be there to hit them on the front end of intake to meet all their needs, to help them get linked. Even if they're with us for a couple of days, we can still get them connected to substance abuse counselors on the outside or organizations. We can connect them with job services. There's things that we can do for them while they're in there to help prevent them from coming back. And that's overall a big, a big benefit of having this whole program put together where we regionalize. It centralizes all those services. We're expanding, as you all know, we'll be expanding the Comprehensive Programming Center in Bedford Heights. We're gonna have more job training. We're in software training out there. We're looking at some welding and some other things if we can possibly pull it off safely in the area. But we're looking at trying to expand all those services out there. And then by June, we want to turn Euclid facility into a female-only programming facility. And then we'll have gender-responsive programming out there for them. And just lastly about some of the great things with the programming that's happened, and I know I was asked this before about getting the data after they leave. We've had Euclid up and running long enough now. We're starting to get some data back, and 76% of the graduates from Euclid, after 6 months to a year, are still employed and have their job. And the recidivism rate out there is 15%, which is very impressive. So it's working. We need to impact more people.
You mentioned the 3.1 million for the kitchen. You said that was in the budget. Was that? I don't recall seeing that in the budget. Was that in Mr. Dever's budget?
I'll defer.
Welcome, Mr. Dever.
Good afternoon, members of council. Michael Dever, Director of Public Works, along with Matt Reimer from my facility unit, and Director Keenan has joined us also, so we have the whole team up here. We developed this cost proposal for the build-out of the fourth floor jail kitchen in the corrections facility. It was in late 2017. So that number actually did not make it into the budget, the $3.1 million. But I was working with Director Keenan. Maybe I'll let you explain, Maggie, how we're going to work this.
So I want to be clear, though, that this was contemplated as part of the budget. So this was what I had presented when we came in the committee hearings to talk about the executive's overall budget reduction plan. What we did was we included net revenue in the 2018 and 2019 budget. So at the time, I know we included 1.7 or 1.9 in 2018, and then 3 million in 2019, revenue only. That would be less than we're actually going to bring in, but it's because we weren't including the cost in the budget because we didn't have actual numbers. Council did approve $3.1 million at its last council meeting, which is the cost to build out the old jail or old kitchen area. So it's in the budget now. The appropriation wasn't in the budget when it was adopted, but the net revenue was, so it was part of the budget.
Okay. And when would you anticipate starting this?
Actually, we've submitted our plans to the city. We are expecting the demolition plan. I believe, Matt, I'll step up.
Matt Reimer, Department of Public Works. Councilman, our demolition phase is underway with respect to the design and permit submission. So we're working that package with our design engineer presently through one of our general engineering contracts. We expect that demolition for non-permitted activities like equipment. There's a lot of equipment in there we can just take out without a construction permit. We'll be starting that work here this month in April, and we expect towards the end of May that we would have our permit approval to start wholesale demolition on that floor, with construction ideally beginning in in June and wrapping up in the August timeframe.
And wraps up in August?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that coincides with meeting with the communities as far as what their concerns are with moving in with us?
Yes, sir.
And are you going to keep us in the loop, because each one of us obviously have these communities, or many of these communities that have already contacted us, and I'd hate to have you having meetings without the council being informed about you being in their district, because these are actual cost savings to those cities. So I anticipate this is going to be something that is going to be well received beyond the 16 communities that you've already mentioned.
Yes, sir, and I will keep you up to speed with what we're doing.
And when do you anticipate starting that?
I'm gonna start that process, Councilman, as soon as Bedford's open, so probably Monday.
So are you going to take it district by district, or east side, west side, south side, central, or how do you think?
I actually plan on starting on the west side.
Okay, so if you could make sure that the council people, where you're going into those areas, understand. I would suggest that you look at the council district and have meetings with those communities, others if they wish to join, but specifically for those communities so the council person knows.
Yes, sir.
And can be part of that. Questions from the council?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Just real quick, how many beds are going to be in this facility?
It'd be 160 to 180.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's 160 on the new build out?
Yes.
Okay, my question would be connecting to services. Okay, so you talked about the inmates are being connected to services. What about, and you talk about drug, rehab, those things, mental health services. What about the children? What about those that are parents? Are you have anything to do with reunification of them with their babies or anything like that?
Yes, ma'am. We have that service now. We have a liaison from Child and Family Services, and we also have our chaplains do a lot with that.
Okay, I'd like to learn a little bit more about that. And the 1.9, you talked about a hub station. Director Keenan, she was stating that we have the 1.9 in the budget already for that. So where are we looking for that hub station to be?
Somewhere on the west side, and that's part of what we have to talk about is I've actually canvassed the police chiefs to try to get some input about what's most convenient for them, because we want to keep their officers back on the street. So we're looking at a couple different areas.
Okay, so it would, I guess, once that's in place, you'll have one on the west side, you'd have Bedford, and you'd have Euclid.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Miller?
Yes. You said that the cost to run the program is $1.9 million per year, and the revenue would range from 3.5 to 5.7. So does that mean that the net revenue is going to be between 1.6 and 3.8 million per year, or is there something else I haven't factored in?
That's the net. That would be the net revenue.
That's a good number. Okay. And you said that you're looking at a couple areas on the west side for the possible transfer facility. Can you tell us what areas you're looking at?
Parma would be one. We've also North Royalton. I've talked to them. They actually approached me wanting to become it. And I've talked to the chief a little bit. We're working with Rocky River.
Okay.
And those are very, when I say I've talked to them, we're just talking. There's
preliminary at this point. Okay, I understand. Okay, and I have heard that in the county jail facility that about 60% of the inmates are pre-sentencing and 40% are post-sentencing. Is that still a pretty good number?
Yes, sir.
And are we giving any thought to doing what they've done in Summit County, where they have a much better pre-trial diversion program, so that we don't have nearly so many people that are sitting in jail waiting for their trials?
Yes, so there's discussions with that, and that's part of part of the reform initiative that's going on, but that's not really under me. That would be the courts.
Do you get to have any input on that process?
Yes, sir.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, and we completely support that and are pushing for it.
Okay, that's good. Keep pushing for that. It's outdated the way we do it, and it's also unfair in terms of diversity issues.
Anything else? And that they're calling it bail reform, but that's all inclusive of the booking, assigning attorneys, arraigning. It's a one-stop shop, which they've been talking about probably now since we've been here, and it makes complete sense to do it. But you have to get the courts, you have to get the prosecutor, you have to get all the cogs that are important to justice moving in the same direction. And it seems as though that they're doing that. So once I think they get that going, the numbers that we're hearing here will make even more sense.
Yes, sir. And I also, just to add to that, I also think that that by regionalizing, the more this grows, the easier, or the more for example, a centralized booking like we're talking about, where we have everybody involved, it becomes easier, since we're at one point, to get the courts together, to get everybody to work together, where we can have first arraignment right there and not have so many people in. So we're taking these steps. That's what the end hope is for all this.
Right, and it really is kind of a legacy program to get that put in, and I hope they can all move forward on that. Thank you for your time, Mr. Dever. I have not concerns, but questions about the Cleveland Police Headquarters. Where are we at, and how much longer do we have to go before everybody's in?
I'll have Matt step up and give a briefing. We thought you'd ask about it today.
Councilman, good afternoon again. Matt Reimer with the Department of Public Works. The Cleveland Police Building is going quite well on an aggressive schedule. Just as a quick recap, it was on September 29th of 2017 that we had the agreement in place to be able to get in there and start our construction activities into the police building, and that is to build out the first floor, second floor, and fourth floor for our probation department relocation that we need to do out of the Marion building, among other things in the building. We started that work with our building trades the next week on October the 2nd, and have been going strong ever since. We're nearly complete on the first floor urinalysis lab, which would be located there, and also we had to relocate some other tenants that were in the building. We've successfully relocated them and have our public restrooms almost ready to stand up in that building. We also took care of a lot of code compliance issues with fire egress coming out of the upper floors, and made sure that we were up to speed on that as our permit required. We're in wholesale construction. We had to gut our second floor and fourth floor, which will be where the probation department in Hull is at. All their probation officers, with the exception of task, will be on those 2 floors. Those are in various stages of wall framing going up, walls going on, paint being put on, and utilities being run. We had a lot more mechanical renovations in those floors than we had expected and anticipated, but our crews have been relatively unfazed other than the time it takes to get those designed and implemented. So we're looking good right now. We anticipate being done with construction by June 1st, and then we'll start our relocation process. We'll coordinate that with the courts, of course, and make sure that we're meeting all their needs on that relocation. But we have an active engagement with them, monthly walkthroughs with Judge Russo and the administrators, and would continue to get good support from them as well as good response from our suppliers.
Just in regards to that too, I know that Matt has reached out to the council staff just to see if there is any interest of the council members doing a walkthrough of the facility to see the build out going on, to get a better sense, because there has been a number of items that have gone through the Board of Control over the last few months here, and I know both council members on that board have been asking frequent questions about it, so we thought it was good come in, see what's going on, so you get a better understanding of the magnitude of the project itself.
Okay, thank you for that. Indiana, when that's completed, Cleveland eventually moves out. Is the public defender, that's the ideal situation, to move them also over?
Right now, there isn't. We don't have any programming for the future use of once the Cleveland police leave. We still do not have a time frame on that. Once they get back to us, obviously the agreement we have in place, they can stay for a certain amount of time, and they will be paying rent to stay. So until they identify their future location, which we understand there's 3 locations downtown that have shortlisted, until they come up with that solution, we're planning that they'll be with us for at least the foreseeable future.
Right.
But as for the what is going to happen in that space after they do vacate the building, I think that's it's up in the air. We do have other agencies throughout the county that may fit within that facility. At the same time, the Justice Center discussion is kind of creeping along here slowly, and we hope to. That may be swing space for future build out also. So that is yet to be determined though.
Right. The only reason I ask that is it's the next domino. If they do move them out, then Courthouse Square can be sold, which it should have been to begin with, but long story short there. So I understand the contract we have with Cleveland, and it's pretty open-ended, so we just have to wait and be patient there, and they're paying, so it's not a big deal with us. Any other questions regarding this? Thank you for your time. Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Miscellaneous business? Other public comment?
Yes, Reverend Pinckney.
Through the chairperson, to the council members and other persons present, I came here today, as I told you, Councilwoman, through the chairperson to Councilwoman Conwell, to clear up some misunderstandings as it relates to me. The 137th Division of the Psalm speaks of a time when people were taken into captivity and were required to do something that seemed to be impossible in their situation. And I wanted to say to you, Chairperson, I don't know how I ended up in this mess, but I know I did. My dad says, don't fight. My mom says, don't fight for me with your fists. And I'm not a fighter. I'm a loving person. And I don't know who the chairperson is now because I don't know if y'all changed or not. But I'm asking you to revisit why I initially came to you all in the first place. Because the system of public safety and justice has been compromised, and justice affairs. And please get with Administrative and Presiding Judge John J. Russo to do so. I had a very difficult time this weekend because I didn't get to spend it. I haven't heard from or seen my children or my grandchildren, and my son's been living here in Cleveland for a year now, and I have not seen him one time because someone compromised me through justice for reporting abuse and violated my rights to protect and provide for myself, my children, and others that I love and dearly care about. Councilwoman Conwell, if you would, through the chairperson, I'd like to talk to you about something to help in terms of Children and Family Services from the other meeting and their parking. Through the chair and to the council members and others present, I don't know how I'm alive. I just know that I am. And I could have done so many things that would have been legal even. But that's not who I am, and that's not what I do. And I did bring some announcements, too, for some of the things. And I have some other clergy and other community leaders that would help you all with court community service, because people do have debts that they owe to society for breaking the law. I didn't get to celebrate Passover, and I didn't get to celebrate the resurrection with my family this year. And that's very serious and very crucial to me. And I mean no disrespect to your bill, but I did want to let you know, Council President Brady, through the chairperson, the people I've been suing, you're not one of them. They're just caught, and they're doing desperate things like desperate people do. And I do want to let you know that, because there's bad air between us, and I didn't come here for that.
Thank you.
I wanted to let you know that. Thank you, chairperson.
Thank you. We're adjourned.